All right, well, today we're going to talk about the national college admissions bribery scandal that's rocked the Palo Alto area with indictments of several Silicon Valley parents. Here to give us some perspective and an inside look at the college advising industry, John Raftrey, who's been helping students prepare for college admissions since 2011. John, thanks for being here.
Justin, it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I want to just ask you right off the bat, what was your reaction when you read about the news of the indictments and the scandal?
Like, I was shocked, and I was truly shocked that it was that you could do it, and B, how many steps along the way this guy had figured out.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like an accident.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's a little bit like the movie Casablanca, where they close down the cafe for gambling, and oh, there's gambling in here, I can't believe it, and they go up and give the police chief his winnings, So it's kind of like, oh, I can't believe there's bad things going on here.
Right.
So you kind of knew there was some stuff, but I didn't think it was that bad. I didn't think it was as bad as it is.
Yeah.
But now I think it's going to get worse.
How's that?
Well, I don't think this is the only guy. I mean, if he figured it out, there's more than one person that robs a bank, right?
More than one person knows how to rob a bank then. Yeah, so you blog for Palo Alto Online on this topic, and your co-blogger, Lori McCormick, said this week that she thought that there are more scandals to come. So you share that view?
I agree, yeah. There's just so many opportunities along the way. If you really wanted to, you could cheat. And, I think the new word of the week is moral hazard. There's nobody overlooking any of these steps.
Okay.
The IDs to get into the testing center aren't really, they don't have driver's licenses, right? So they use school IDs. How easy are those to fake? All the way to the decisions made in the admissions office that aren't really reviewed by anybody. I mean, they're reviewed by the head of admissions, but they don't audit the decision-making process that goes into making those decisions on who gets in. They will audit how well they do once they're there and say, oh, look, all these students got this grades and same as last year, so we must have let in the right kids, which is a way of measuring, but I don't think it measures the right thing.
Yeah, so I've heard some people say this is the tip of the iceberg just because of how complicated the admissions process is, how many moving parts there are, how many different opportunities there are. Do you think, though, that saying it's the tip of the iceberg is really fair to the industry as a whole? Like, do you think this is just something that wealthy parents in particular are taking advantage of, but the majority of parents who are using the system,
there's a couple million kids who apply to college every year. And so this is a small amount.
Clearly.
And so it's not even going to hit critical mass. But there's stuff like this that goes on, and a lot of stories written about how a donation to the school shows up right about the same day as the admission letter shows up, and it's a legal donation. And there is a whole kabuki theater back and forth of how that all works so that it doesn't look like a quid pro quo, but it looks suspicious.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of discussion about that, about whether, the quote-unquote side door is that different from the back door of donations and legacies and expensive tutors and all those other legal ways that parents give their kids a leg up. And I'm curious where you land on that. Obviously there's the line of just the criminal aspect of it, but there's a much more systemic way of gaming the system that's in use all the time.
Yeah, there's when they students sued Harvard, Harvard Z list got exposed, which is a special list for donors, famous people, and they all go into their own little pool. And so, this has been going on, like forever. But the key thing to remember really is they're trying to figure out, who to let in, and they have to pay the bills, and they have a business to run. And so I'm okay with, if they have a chaired professor at Stanford who's being recruited by Princeton, and their kid doesn't get into Stanford but gets into Princeton, he might be more tempted to take his lab to Princeton. And I don't know anybody who said that, and that's just a hypothetical, and I'm not casting any aspersions on any of my Harvard or any of my Stanford professor friends, but they want to keep that guy happy or that woman happy. And so I think that's okay. But as long as they keep it to a reasonably small number, and the kids who get in are still qualified to go to that school.
Sure. So I'm curious, in the Palo Alto area, I hear a lot, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of college prep kind of services around here. Can you just give us an idea of like what's considered normal for parents to do in order to help their kids prepare for college admissions or go through the college admissions process? Is it normal for everyone to be hiring somebody to help them, or?
Well, it depends really where you want to go to school to some extent. Okay. If you want to go to a CSU, the application's pretty easy to fill out. It really is grades and test scores. There's no essay, no teacher recommendations. And so I don't think you need me to, if you're going to go to San Jose State or Cal State East Bay or San Francisco State or something like that. But to get to the like the medium and the hard to get into schools, it's really become an arms race. And some kids aren't taught how to write in high school. They're taught how to analyze text, but they're not taught how to write a first-person essay. And so they need some help in just even how to approach writing an essay.
Yeah.
You know, with my students, I do a couple of days of brainstorming just before they even write anything, just to get the story down. They're not storytellers, you know, and really if you're a storyteller, you have a story and then you write it down.
Yeah. And you have a background in journalism
Journalism and marketing,
So one of the main focuses of your work is to just help people to learn how to write.
Right, and go through the brainstorming process and how to break it down and all that. And I think some of them are frustrated with how long it takes, because you got to do a bunch of rewrites. You have to think about it a long time before you can start writing it. And I can tell like some of them are surprised that it takes this long.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'm curious with the students and families you work with, are they generally focused on sort of a select group of colleges and you have to do a lot of educating on the huge breadth of options that are out there, and sort of are there resources that you can point people to educate themselves on that?
Yeah, the U.S. News and World Report rankings are the tool of the devil. Because especially families whose parents went to school in some other country, and they haven't been through the whole United States system. And so they really use the U.S. News list to determine where their kid could go to school, because in a lot of countries, a list like that matters. And but you can't look at the list and say number 30 is a better school than number 40. I mean, I think it's helpful directionally. Yeah, some schools are going to challenge you more. The tests are going to be harder. The classroom discussions will be at a higher level, and some won't be that way. But it's a continuum. And if you go, I looked before I came at like Harvard Law School lets in kids from 187 different colleges. And so those are 187 different colleges that Harvard Law likes. So and they're not seeing who went to number 11 or number 40.
Yeah. I mean, a research associate from Challenge Success, the school reform group at Stanford, put out just a reaction piece yesterday saying, and citing their research on sort of that, where you go to college does not predict your later success in life, and said, it's not where you go to school, it's what you do at school. And I think but it's hard, and I remember hearing that when I was applying to college, and not really, it's hard for that to resonate with an 18-year-old who hears a lot of messaging around these are the schools that you should be proud about saying that you got into.
Yeah. Is it more competitive now to get into all colleges or the top colleges, the name brand colleges? Is it more competitive? And
there are less competitive schools are going out of business. It seems like every year there's another one going out of business. And it's usually a small liberal arts school that it's subsisted, educating the local community or whatever, something like that. And so for those schools, they're getting less applications. What's happening is it's so easy to apply to the top schools that the top schools are getting way more applications. I think UCLA and Berkeley get over 100,000 applications. Like, how do you process 100,000 applications? I mean, if somebody applies for a job here and you get deluged with resumes, your job is to find a reporter. You're not going to worry about this guy might have been better than this guy. You got to hire somebody, and so they've got all these applications to go through.
Yeah.
And the more applications you have, the greater chance for like error.
I'm curious if you think this is actually a tipping point, or this is just sort of we're all going to be in shock and talk about it for 2 weeks, and then things are going to go back to the status quo.
I think things are going to have to change because it's front page news now.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, oh, the Bushes all went to Yale and that kind of thing. But now you see like how widespread it is. Plus, you have the Harvard case. There'll be other cases
That's
like
the affirmative action case at Harvard, right?
Yeah. And so people are this is starting to get front page headlines. This is the first time my profession has been in the news for like 5 days in a row. I mean, this is a story that has legs. So I think something is going to bubble up because people are going to start asking questions and they're going to say, how did this happen? And if it's that easy to bribe a coach and get a kid in, there are some safeguards that are not in place. And I think we're going to start to see that. And admission offices are very closed. They like to make their own decisions, almost like picking a new pope. They go into a little enclave, and then when they admit the students, the smoke comes out, you know? And so to go public with how they work is going to be hard for them to do.
Yeah. Now, I know that there are associations for your industry, professional standards. Are there any kinds of discussions happening right now that could put pressure, upwards on the college admissions system? Because I know you're working with the students and the parents, but who's going to put pressure on the college admissions officers? I'm wondering.
Well, it could be the Justice Department.
Very true.
We're in a funny way, how this works is when they talk to us and we have relations with admissions officers and we tour a lot of schools and meet with them and stuff. And so in those cases, we're sort of the customer and they're trying to tell us what a great college they have. And then it turns around and then when the kids actually apply, the roles are reversed.
Right.
So I think you're going to have to see some changes. I mean, you just can't go on like this. There's just too many stories of identical kids having completely different outcomes. Like nobody's really identical. But I have a student who got into MIT that didn't get into Berkeley. Figure that one out.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I hear that there's a lot of pressure on parents and on students. Have you seen this among people who approach you? Have you seen anyone sort of looking for the outside edge, to getting in? Do you feel like you have to discourage people from doing things like parents writing their kids' application essays or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I'd say that is a number one hot button topic in my profession.
Yeah.
College admission officers can claim they can tell because of the style and everything else. I'm sure they can't tell every time, and I can't tell every time. I mean, my style is, gee, Jimmy, your writing seems to improve about halfway through the essay. You really figured that out. How'd that happen?
All right, what happened there?
But it's really hard. You can't accuse them without evidence and all that. But I did have one mom, after the kid didn't get into his early schools, went back into the application and rewrote all his activities. But rewrote them in a way that were clearly not the truth. And, she just was trying to help her kid a little bit by sprucing up his resume, And, turns out we got it straightened out and he got into a couple good schools in the second round and all that. But I didn't work with him, the first round through.
Yeah.
And so it all worked out. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and there's pressure on me from parents who aren't satisfied with the quality of their kid's essay.
Yeah.
And, in some cases I say, but this is the kind of essay they want. And so this actually is a good essay because they haven't tried to get all these kids into Michigan or wherever. And so hopefully most of the time I can convince them to stay with what's there. But I've had parents, argue with me over word choice and stuff, not even the big themes. Or they'll say, we just don't like it. And I'll say, well, what don't you like about it? I don't know, the whole thing just seems off.
Yeah.
And if they're doing that to me as a professional, they're doing it to their kids. And I know some parents are hard on their kids are harder on the essay with their kids than I am.
Wow.
And you can't write when you're under pressure.
Yeah, so stressful.
I'm curious if you think that the students whose parents were involved in this, if they were aware, if they should be held accountable in some way, including, if they're at a school that they got into fraudulently, if they should be denied admission.
Yeah, my view has changed. At the beginning, it was like I thought, oh, the poor students, but now it's like they had to know something that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go to any of the high schools around here, you know what everybody else is doing for college, and if you're flying off to Texas to take the SAT, you know something's going on, right? You know that's weird, and so I think it'd be pretty hard to do it without the kids knowing. Even though on some of the tapes it says I wouldn't want my son or daughter to find out. Well, now they know, but I think in a lot of the cases the kids had to know something was going on.
And do you think they should be held accountable for that?
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how the colleges handle this. They're in a tough situation. I mean, one thing they can do is withdraw admission for the kids that are in, which means they were never admitted. The classes they took don't count. They have to apply to college and have to explain why they're applying 3 years after they graduated from high school, and they got to say, well, I was at an honors code violation and my admissions was withdrawn. So it can be start over again time for some of those students. And the solution is community college. We haven't gotten too much into that, but the way to rehabilitate yourself is go to community college, do a lot of good works while you're there, and show that you're reformed. And they're not going to be happy with that, because if you're at USC, and next thing you know, you're at Santa Monica City College, there's a difference there.
Yeah. It seemed like for a lot of the indicted families, it was an issue of reputation, an issue of status, and there's also an issue of wanting the certainty, the guarantee that my kid wants to go here, I'm going to make it happen, And
well, they do that in their life, right? I mean, that's how they get to be successful.
Yeah.
By making things happen.
Right.
This is another thing to make happen.
Yeah, just what they're used to.
Yeah. Well, what's so shocking about it to me in a way is that these are already very privileged, wealthy families whose kids would probably be totally fine no matter where they ended up, and they were going this extra length to get that guarantee, and taking spots away from students who work so hard to get to these places, and it would be life-changing for them versus a student who's already well-resourced and is probably going to be supported throughout college financially and otherwise. It wouldn't make as much difference for them.
Yeah, let's talk about the fallout just briefly.
Let me just talk real quickly. There's been studies done that the people who benefit the most are people from the lower economic third. If they go to Harvard, they can jump 2 classes. And if you're a rich kid, anything you get from Harvard, you've already gotten in terms of money and status and being in the right social ring and have the connections.
Yeah.
But for the kids who have none of that, if they go to these schools and are successful, for them it really makes a difference, because they've tracked kids who got into Harvard and got into Colorado, and one went to Colorado and he has the same salary, same everything as his class would have had at Harvard.
Yeah, interesting. So college makes an impact, but makes such a huge impact for those in the lower socioeconomic ring. So, Elena, you interviewed John for your story this week, and you were talking about concerns over fallout, what this might mean to, for example, students who have learning disabilities who need more time, and now that whole system is a little bit under suspicion.
So I would hate, there are kids who have learning disabilities who the information's in their brain, it just takes longer to get out. And so for those students, if you give them extra time, you can find out what's in their brain and how smart they are. The funny thing is, if you're not that smart, you can get extra time, and it's not going to make you any smarter. It probably may not even improve your test score that much. It might make you feel more confident or less test anxious or anything.
Right.
But for the kids who documented who really need it, they really need it, and so it gets a whole group of people who several generations ago might not have even gone to college, but they're like I don't want to malign any particular profession, but he's like the really smart janitor or something who helps kids with their homework and everybody can't figure it out. Well, maybe he's got a learning disability and college wasn't an option for him. So they're letting those kids in, and I know that there are parents who go to psychologists and say, will you write a letter? And you've got to, and I think most of them don't.
Yeah.
But I would hate to see those kids punished because it really would discourage them and, halt their growth.
Yeah, yeah. Any other final thoughts on either the scandal or how the industry is doing right now in the wake of people looking a little bit with more scrutiny at what's going on?
Well, Senator or Congressman Mo Udall from Arizona has this quote, everything's been said, but not everybody said it. And I think that's kind of where we are, where everybody's said stuff. And now we just kind of have to see the rollout. And I think a lot of it is quick knee-jerk reaction stuff, but let's just see what colleges do to react to this. And let's see what the College Board does to react to this. The ball is kind of in their court now, but I don't think the pressure is going to be off.
Are you hopeful that things will change for the better?
I'm hopeful in the long run, but I'm not going to describe what I think the long run is.
How long that run is.
Right, yeah.
All right. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us. Again, Palo Alto college advisor, and you've been doing this for about 8 years now. And so thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
Oh, great. This was a lot of fun.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
That wraps up this edition of Behind the Headlines. If you want to keep up with Palo Alto news, you can subscribe to our daily email free, which is at paloaltoonline.com/express. We'll see you next week.